Welcome back to Track Talk Podcast. We are your hosts, Emma and Hannah, and we are here with another very special guest. You may know this motorsport connoisseur as at Maklovesmotorsport on Instagram and TikTok. She, like us, has made it a mission to turn eyeballs towards the amazing series that is the NTT IndyCar series. She's taken this passion to the Everything F1 team this year by the way of articles, podcast episodes, and social content. She was also a media attendee at the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach this past weekend, and she's a dear friend of ours, so we're so excited to have her here to chat IndyCar with us. Welcome, Mac.
Hello.
Woo. We're
So
happy
excited to be here.
We're happy to have you on. Hannah needs a breather.
I need a breather.
I know that was super long-winded and that was perfect. So thank you for the amazing intro.
You deserve it all.
Before we get into the Long Beach Grand Prix, tell us how you got into motorsports.
Oh yeah.
Yes, so I'm the average American DTS fan. So I think I started watching in like February of 2023. So binged it. First actual F1 race I watched was Melbourne 2023. So when they're in Australia. And then obviously, dove in head first, pretty much finding all of the podcast content, people to follow. And, your guys' podcast is one of the first motorsport podcasts I listened to. So, which is really exciting to even be here in the first place. So very lucky, but I kind of started to learn a little bit more about obviously open wheel racing. And then I kind of heard about Indy cars or the 500. And I was like, this is an F1, but the cars, look very similar. And it was kind of around the time that you guys had started, talking a little bit about IndyCar and educating people. And that's kind of when I just dove in headfirst again. And I just love learning about motorsport, whether it's open wheel racing or any other series, and basically just took me by storm. And now I'm freaking here with all of these IndyCar and, F1 related memorabilia and photos that just take over my office. So wouldn't have it any other way.
So you must have added a lot from this past weekend because it originally was just Pato and Christian, right?
Yes, it was very bare. And so I replaced with a newer Christian, unfortunately without the mustache. But yes, there was a ton of autograph signing, which was really cool. And obviously they're super accessible just to get autographs. And so I was able to add to the merch, which was awesome.
So is Long Beach the first race that you've attended live?
I went to Portland last year. So
Okay.
it was kind of so weird because obviously I just started watching F1 and then learning a little bit about IndyCar. And I was like, oh, almost all the races are in the US. And I was like, I wonder if they come to West Coast. And, midsummer, I look at the calendar and I'm like, holy cow, they literally come to Portland and it's, 30 minutes away from where I live. So I kind of attended that race after watching a couple of IndyCar races, but didn't know a ton, about the teams and the drivers and the overall series. So yeah, this was kind of my first one traveling race, but also knowing, I would say, a lot of information about the series and the drivers.
And overall grade.
A+. Like I don't think, well, because, the Long Beach Grand Prix is so coveted and it's just been around for so long that it really is the second largest race outside of the 500. And I was telling all the workers, because obviously you had, everyone there from IndyCar, but also a lot of the Long Beach Grand Prix volunteers. And I said, I'm like, this is so insane. Like the only other thing that's going to live up to this is the 500. And after that, I mean, obviously the races are great, but it's just not going to compare to this event.
I know. I feel like I didn't realize how big Long Beach was until this year, but it is like the longest standing race in like IndyCar race in the United States. The history behind it is, yeah, I never really understood how big it was, but yeah, it's after this, it's the Indy 500 is like the next biggest race. And it is comparable to the Monaco Grand Prix. They're both street circuits. Just the amount of like celebrity presence that's there as well. Dylan Sprouse was there.
Did you see Dylan Sprouse?
Dylan Sprouse was there. Yes, he was in the Andretti hospitality, and then he was in the RLL area chatting with the drivers. And then there was also Patrick Dempsey was there. Didn't see him, unfortunately.
I didn't see him.
I didn't know he was there.
Gwyneth Paltrow was there. Didn't see her.
Jennifer
Noelle
Garner?
Miller.
Oh, Noelle Miller.
Who was that?
I love
Jennifer Garner.
Oh, I didn't see her either. Like they were just all amongst the paddock. And I know a lot of them came out just for Sunday, but like Patrick Dempsey and some of them were there like Thursday and Friday, which is pretty cool. Oh, and then obviously Schmidt from New Girl. So Max Greenfield was there because that was part of the unfrosted livery on the 8 car. So that was really cool as well.
Just to like second that, we didn't really know how big it was till this year was when we were in thermal. Every single person that came up to us was like, you must be going to Long Beach. You're going to Long Beach. Come on, you're going to Long Beach. And I'm like, no, we're not actually, but like, should we be? Like next
Yeah,
year, I feel like it's a must.
It's a must next year.
Yeah.
it is, especially because, well, it was cool going there, just networking and meeting people. But one of the guys that was helping run, the PR for the event was telling me that, this was the 40th year anniversary that we had the Indy cars on track, because obviously it was a Formula One race, and the first race was a Formula 5000 event. But next year is the 50th anniversary. So this year was big, and with the convention center and all the other support series that were on there, there's so many activations and cool things to do. So on top of that, this year was the 49th. Like next year is going to be even bigger, which I can't even fathom, but
So we
it's
have to
going to be
go.
awesome.
We all have to go.
Yes.
Next year. We're gonna go. Hannah.
And even though the calendar isn't out yet, like this year was kind of an anomaly being a little bit later in April. And usually it's like the 11th, 10th, 12th, 13th, 14th weekend. And so it's going to revert back to that weekend next year. So if anyone's looking at going, it's not going to be this year. It's going to be or this time. It's going to be a couple weeks before. So
No, that's
mark your
actually great,
calendars.
because immediately my first thought was like, this is end of term. This is exam time. This would be a terrible time to go on a trip. But if it's a couple weeks earlier, that might work out.
Mhm. Throw it on there.
I'm not in school. I'll just go.
Yeah. The beauty, right?
Mhm.
I'm a perpetual student. We're almost done.
Almost. So were you there the Thursday? Like, were you there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yes. Yeah. So it was a long 4 days. I flew out of Portland. My flight was at 6 a.m., landed in LAX at like 8:30ish. And so changed, got a rental car and just drove straight into Long Beach, and, picked up my pass and just kind of explored. And it's just amazing.
And do you have the media credentials to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like being able to be in the media center, and obviously there's some food and whatnot, but yeah, it was cool how kind of seeing how after day, there's just more and more and more and more people. But I just people were just in awe, and I think it was really interesting too, seeing there was a ton of F1 merchandise, like people were wearing it, not necessarily being sold, but like a lot of Checo stuff, a lot of Red Bull stuff, a lot of McLaren, and it was cool in the sense that it's like, okay, this is a possibility that these people were watching F1 and they're, trying out possibly a different series, or maybe they don't have any IndyCar apparel, but, they want people to know that they do watch motorsports, or at least they watch F1. So hoping that is kind of a sign that we're maybe converting, or at least everyone is understanding how cool IndyCar is.
I noticed that in Toronto too. There were a lot of people wearing like F1 merch at the IndyCar race. So like Red Bull, like not like McLaren, I understand because the teams of those sports, but there's like Red Bull, there's like a Haas, like someone was wearing like a Haas shirt, and I was like, all right, like you're here. That's all that matters.
That's
Exactly. We all have something in common.
Yeah, that's part of my mission too. I think our mission collectively is like better merch. Like if we can help with that, like better IndyCar merch, because the IndyCar store itself has a very small selection. And I do feel like it is kind of like tailored to one demographic. Like it was tough for like Emma, like this is a men's t-shirt that I'm wearing, which is, I have no problem wearing a men's t-shirt, to be honest with you. But like, we just need something for everyone. I feel like there kind of isn't. And then you look to sites like Etsy and you look to sites like Redbubble, and it's like, well, that's not who you necessarily want to be supporting when you're buying merch. You want to be supporting the teams, the drivers, IndyCar is a series. So like they do need to, that's one thing that I'm like, let's get better. Let's help.
Yeah, they need better merch. Definitely.
Yes. And who knows, maybe with Zach Brown kind of hoping to take over that marketing role, or at least, the people that work under him to help market that. I think that's going to be a huge, huge deal.
Yeah, I agree.
So you did a track walk. Did you do a track walk on the Thursday?
I did.
Were you able to?
Yes.
How was that? Tell us about
it.
It
it was good. It was very warm, and I had my laptop because I was, leading up to it, writing an article for the weekend for EF1. And so I'm like, not just going to leave my computer anywhere. So I'm like, I have this like 20-pound backpack on me and trying to just kind of winging it, because I was by myself that day. So I literally just was like, you know what, I'm just going to wing it and soak it in. And so it was really cool seeing, all the drivers and their teams walking around the track and trying to not necessarily overhear the conversations, but I was just so curious on what they were taking in. And obviously there was also IMSA there this weekend. So there were IMSA drivers that were walking the track and, just trying to take in, how cool of a street circuit it was. And just, I literally took a photo with for Lee Diffie and his boys by the fountain. It was like the cutest thing ever. And it was just like, holy cow, almost every other corner, I was like, I kind of just stood there and took it in, because it's such a cool and unique experience to be able to do that. But also just trying to soak it in was really fun.
And for the practice sessions and qualifying, like where did you watch from? Because a lot of
Yeah,
people
I
like
watched
don't. When you have like the media passes or the credentials, you have access to everything. But then during the race itself, it's kind of like
Yeah, you don't like also have a grandstand.
You don't have a grandstand
Yeah.
seat. You can't just like go and sit and watch. So a lot of times people will just like crowd around a TV screen or like kind of near in the pit area. But yeah, so where did you watch from?
Yeah, I pretty much watched all from the pit lane, which, sometimes I'm like, maybe, during practice I should have kind of explored a little bit. But I just like stood there with, my AirPods in, listening to the NBC broadcast, because that's how you kind of understand what's going on. So it was like noise canceling. So, I still have hearing after the weekend, but I mainly just stood by the Firestone tent because, they have the TV there and they have the telemetry. So being able to see the track temperature. So that was really interesting, varying from the first practice on Friday, when the track was like 117 versus, Saturday morning where the track was only like 82 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius people. But
I'm like, yeah, I totally know. I have a ballpark
87,
idea.
Yeah, cool.
So I kind of stood there, and obviously my feet hurt after the weekend. Like, I was like averaging 15,000 steps, but like that's a street race for you, in general. And also I didn't know where I was going the first couple days. So it was just, figuring it out. But Long Beach does a pretty good job in regards to the amount of like screens that are accessible, not just for the pit lane, but I think for all of the grandstands. So right where the pit entry was next to the NTT data stand and the Firestone stand, there was a massive, massive screen as well. So a lot of people just kind of stood and then faced kind of like the opposite way of the track where the pit entry was to watch it as well.
Did you connect with any drivers? Like what did you do with like your media passes? Like what's kind of the content that you made for this weekend?
Yeah, I was with Sarah Offenbach, so Offie on track. And so we were able to kind of work together and we were able to do the media pen. So I think we got Pato, Rossi, Scotty Mack, Nolan Siegel, Pietro.
All of our faves.
Yeah, all of our favorites.
Yes. And it was because this is just such a larger event, like it was very crowded because there's only, one certain amount that are allowed to be invited, but they're also, with their PR people. So it's almost like, oh my God, it's like herding cats, like literally like babysitting, like, no, you got to come over here, got to go over there. So we were there right next to Fan Amp. So with Caitlin and Josh and Greg. And so they were great. We were just standing next to each other and kind of like helping pass, drivers one to the other. So it was really cool just kind of asking him some motorsport questions, but obviously, some one-offs just to hopefully show their personality a little bit and, what makes them laugh and smile to hopefully gain a little bit more of a following from maybe the F1 side.
Yeah. And what was your favorite interaction, do you think, with the drivers? What are your opinions on the drivers?
She's a Christian Lundgaard fan.
That I knew,
Yeah.
but
love Christian, love Pietro, love Rossi. Obviously, Pato's a huge favorite. Like I avoided their side of the paddock because it was like literally impossible to walk by because there's
Arrow
so
McLaren
many fans.
Just always has such a crowd of people around their trucks. Like it's at any given time during the weekend, it's just so crowded. Just for Pato.
And so, yeah, just for Pato. Yeah. And so it was really cool being able to interact with them. And obviously they're super accessible and, trying to pay a little bit more attention to the rookies as well. Cause there's a handful of rookies, and I think they're all really great. I think it's really cool that you have the ability to go up and talk to them, take pictures with them, have autographs, them just literally walking by you, like that just like doesn't happen in F1 unless you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars to have that access. And most of them are pretty genuine. And it's interesting comparing it to F1 because there is this massive like pay disparity. Obviously you can say in F1 the rookies are making $1 million and then you have Lewis Hamilton getting 100 times that next year with Ferrari. But in regards to IndyCar, it's like you have some drivers that are not making money driving in that seat. Like they have this sponsorship, they're bringing a sponsorship or the team has a sponsorship, but like they're just getting their housing paid for and like they're just having to find other ways to make money. So you have this like big disparity of drivers that have won the 500 and are very well known compared to maybe some rookies that have worked their way up to get sponsorships, but they're not forking in, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So they're kind of, not to say they're like us, but like I feel like more attainable. Yes. And realistic and just not out of touch probably compared to maybe some F1 drivers. Not that they're saying they're all out of touch, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. Like, so yeah, some drivers on IndyCar, like they don't get paid. Like it is just from the sponsorships. Like the teams itself don't pay them to drive.
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of Hinch and Rossi, and James Hinchcliffe is the first person to tell you, like, and even Connor Daly's podcast, he says the same thing. Like, they didn't make money at all in the first like year or couple years of their driving careers. It's just like you trust the process, you kind of keep it going, and then you do get to or the lucky ones and the ones that it works out for you to get to a spot where you are an Alex Rossi or you are a, you know, Pato Award, which I don't think Pato ever had to go through that like beginning stages, to be honest with you, because he's been a superstar since forever. But like, yeah.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
And the race itself, I do want to like get into that because I mean, that was entertaining. There were a few parts in it, just comparing it to F1, it's so different. Like, first of all, the penalties that they have. So we saw a drive-through penalty at one point with Pato when he hit the back of his teammate. I feel like they handled it so much better than like if it were to be like the Mercedes or if it was like.
So I actually almost posted on our story. I thought you were gonna freak out, but I almost posted on our story Pato's Instagram picture and with his caption, and I almost said like, take notes at Lance Stroll. Like, this is how you take accountability for a racing incident.
Pato did take accountability.
I was so sad.
I would not be mad because I was thinking the exact same thing. Because he was like, sorry to the team and to Alex.
And to Alex, ruined both of our races. Yeah.
I owe you a beer or something like that.
I owe everyone a beer. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that's sportsmanship.
Like snaps for Pato. That was good.
And so he definitely ruined. It's unfortunate. Like, he ruined him and Rossi's race. Rossi had to go back into the pit like after the first whatever lap that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pato's penalty was a drive-through penalty, which is a thing in F1. It just isn't ever.
Hasn't been used for like years.
Hasn't ever been used.
Yeah.
But it is a thing. I know, bring it back for real. And then there's another part. I don't know what Lundgaard actually did, but he had the penalties. Oh, unsafe release. It was unsafe
in the
release
pit lane with Kirkwood.
And his penalty was he had to let 5 cars pass. That's what it was, which I was like, that's interesting. Because it's not just letting the one car pass that you might have like screwed over.
It's giving up the place. It's not just giving up the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved that. Like, and
and
you
it's
don't
like
see
less
that in F1.
severe. No, and it was less severe than a pit lane because the pit lane is super long. And
it was like 40 seconds is what it was.
Yes, because obviously IMSA has to have room too, and it's so long. It's so long, and so obviously that just destroys a lot of your race. And at least like with Lundgaard, you know, having to drop back 5, you can be methodical with it. And I think right after he dropped 5, like then he took off past Linus. Yeah, exactly. And it was like, oh, you know, just let you by. And then, you know, the next turn I'm overtaking. So it keeps it interesting. And like, you just don't know what race control is going to do. And like, obviously they didn't deem the Herta and Newgarden incident in turn 11 towards the end of the race, which, you know, restricted Joseph from getting on the podium. So then there was a little bit of controversy and conversation about that. But, you know, they're all open to dialogue. And so, you know, when it's like, oh, in F1, it's being reviewed by the stewards, we're like, all right, I'm going to see a 5-second penalty, you know, come up on the screen in a minute. With IndyCar, you're like, I have no idea what they're going to do.
No, literally no idea.
But I think it's also just a testament to the racing in IndyCar. Like, you could never let 5 cars pass in F1 and have any chance of regaining any of those places. It's the cars, it's the competitive nature of like, you're using the same engine. So there's no car that's like this far and above. So it's purely on driver, you know, talent and skill. So I think that is something that could never work in F1, but works so well in Indy. And then it's also just interesting. Like, I would much rather see a drive-through penalty or like a car pass penalty than watching a car in the pit box for 5 seconds or 10 seconds while no one can touch it and they're all freaking out because if they do, it has to get restarted. Like, I don't like that. So yeah.
And like Scott Dixon, you know, the fuel saving masterclass, you know, he started in 8th and he won. And at Long Beach, a street race, let's keep that in mind, like only 6 drivers have been able to convert a pole to a win in the 40 years that they've raced IndyCar there. So it's like when I saw Fro, you know, getting pole, I was excited for him, but I'm like, okay, statistically speaking, like this doesn't always work out. And so the 2 different strategies that were used by the teams and you just not knowing what's going to happen is just, you know, I can't even fathom an F1 race that we see on the calendar every single year only having 6 times that the pole sitter won. Like, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Especially in a street race.
Even when we saw Will like leading for the first few laps after he overtook Fro, we were like, oh my gosh, we'd love to see Will win. But like, now we're on lap like 25 here of 85. Like, it's just, you know, we'll see.
You can't call it at that point. And especially because I thought it was so interesting that the commentators really made note and were really talking about the different strategies. Cause there were, for the most part, like 2 strategies that were going on. You know, whether it was like the 1-stop or was it 2-stop and 3-stop or can't fully remember, but they were like, we don't know which, like up until the very end, we were like, we actually have no idea which is the better strategy. Like, even the commentators are trying to figure it out.
Yes, and obviously they've driven Indy cars and have been in the series for a long time. And what was fascinating to me, because I was able to listen to it a little bit during the race, but the service isn't great, so there's some that I was missing out on. So like literally on the plane ride back, like that night I was watching it, I'm like, can't get enough. But they were literally saying like within 30 to 20 laps less, they're like, do we think Dixon's gonna, be able to stay on the podium? Like he's leading the race, and they're saying, oh, he's gonna run out of fuel, he's gonna have to stop, like what's gonna happen because it's lifting, coasting, his lap times are gonna slow down. And this man just takes it home.
Not to mention that Colton had so much push to pass. So I was like, I was like, this is like, and Dixon had like hardly anything, and he couldn't even have used it if he wanted to, because he had absolutely no fuel, and that would have burned more. And Colton had lots of fuel to burn. So I was like, Colton's going to overtake him on one of the last laps here with this push to pass, and he's going to be fine.
But no, didn't happen.
I know. I don't know how he did it. Like, I don't know how Scott Dixon did it. And I don't think we fully understand the nature. I don't know, Mac, about you, but like, I don't think we fully understand Scott Dixon and how much of an absolute legend he is.
I know. We need to like fully look into his racing history. When Fan App, Caitlin had released an article on Fan App just explaining like all the drivers and their driving history. And she was like, for Scott Dixon, I need a table, like all of his wins, all of his achievements, everything he's done. It's not just like a paragraph, like it's a full on table listing everything. Like that man is on another level. This win marks his 20th consecutive season with a win,
right?
Which I thought was a really cool stat.
Yeah,
like
so insane.
You don't see that.
No, he's 43 with 3 kids, and he's like, driving, next to Kiffin Simpson, who's 19. Like all of these guys that are racing these series have looked up to him driving. And so, you can make it similar to Alonso, perhaps, like, they're kind of getting to the age, or Hamilton, but it's insane, the physicality and, all of the things that this series puts on you. And he's just like, just another day at the office, just fuel saving and doing something that literally no one else can do. And I'm sure even if he exposed all of his secrets, and obviously he helps his teams out and, giving advice, but, being a strategic engineer for Scott Dixon's car must be just amazing, because you can make the impossible happen.
I think it was, so there's 2 interviews and content pieces that I've seen that have really helped me understand the legend that he is. And one was James Hinchcliffe on Screaming Meals. He was talking with Marcus and with James, and they talked about Scott Dixon the entire time, because Marcus, coming from New Zealand, he like always kind of idolized Scott Dixon. And he was like, this is the guy, this is everything of IndyCar. And when he finally got to like race alongside him, he was like, this is unbelievable. So that was one of the things. And even James looking up to him was crazy, because like James is a legend in his own right. And then, oh, I'm going to forget now. What was the second one I was going to say?
I don't remember. I don't know. You didn't tell me.
So I listened to Hinch and Rossi every week, and they were talking about how just this past week, actually, Alex was talking about how he was just in the gym, and he's like, Scott and I have been battling each other all week. Mac, you know what I'm talking about? And yes. He was like, James is like, what are you talking about? I guess they'll work out at the same gym. And there's like PRs. And Scott Dixon has like all the PR, or like all the records, not just PRs, all the records. And I guess Alex went in one day and beat one. And the next day Scott had it beat again. And then Alex went in, beat it again. And then Scott went in, beat it again. It's just like, he has that competitive nature, but Alex was like, he's just so natural that like he could just go in, put up a personal best and a gym best, and it would be fine. Like no issues. So yeah.
What a guy.
So
it's a legend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll put this on the podcast, but do you know why he's called the Iceman?
Because he's just like stone cold. Like,
is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it. I haven't heard like any other incidents of what caused him, but what was actually really funny was in the pre-race interviews, because last year we had the Pato Scott situation where Pato was, kind of either cutting him off or making a late turn, and obviously sent Scott in the barriers, which obviously this kind of vet that's been doing it since, early 2000s, not someone that you want to do that to, let alone piss off. And so I just found it so interesting that when they were talking to him, he was like, have you forgot about that? Not really thinking about it. He's like, I'm not thinking about it. And then all the commentators were like,
he's thinking about it. He hasn't forgotten about this.
Like, let's look at all the things that he's accomplished since that happened. He's 1000% thinking about it. And he is so competitive that he'll do anything. So I thought that was really funny.
I looked it up. It is just like his ice cold demeanor. Like, yeah.
Right.
Which Marcus Armstrong did say in the Screaming Meals episode that I watched. He was like, yeah, he was asleep 12 minutes before we had to go out for qualifying for like one of the qualifying sessions for one race. And he's like, put up a second place or like P2. And he's like, I don't understand.
When I wake up
Mhm.
from a nap, I am so
Right?
incoherent. I'm like, I can't do anything, let alone drive a car at that speed.
Competitively, no way.
I'd written in my notes here that Colton pulled a
I'm so sorry.
I'd written here that Colton pulled a Lance. That was at the end with Newgarden, right? Like,
Yes, yeah, it was at turn 11, which is like one of the most iconic slow turns in all of motorsport. And I think he just came in a little too hot. And yes, he hit kind of that back gearbox side of Newgarden's car, and it forced Newgarden to go into anti-stall. So then that's how Newgarden and Pillow were able to pass him. And he was not very happy on the radio.
no,
So
because he would have like that second place would have been his had Colton
yes,
not come up. I mean, yeah, because his car like lifted. It wasn't anything as crazy as like Lance and Danny Rigg, but it was enough for me to be like, oh, Colton literally just pulled a Lance. Like, let's think what's gonna happen. I will say Joseph handled it better than Danny did. Again, two different situations, but
Mhm.
I felt so bad for Newgarden.
Well,
Like he
I
had
know.
that race.
And they weren't able, like, and that's the thing is like they can get hot-headed with each other, but like usually they're able to come to some sort of agreement, or like, okay, let's agree to disagree. And it's not kind of the he said, she said that we sometimes see with all these post-race interviews in F1, where it's like the second they get out of the car, we're like, come here, like, let's have this conversation. And so then they're just kind of like able to move on. But they always kind of say some snippy comments like, well, if that's how the series wants us to race, and like, let's race. And it's like, all right, let's go. Like, it's only going to make this even more exciting. So I didn't even really see it. And then I remember looking at the podium, like, wait, where's Newgarden? Because obviously he was on the hunt for so long. And then rewatching it, I was like, ooh, okay. Yeah, I can see why he might be a little upset about that.
Joseph's gonna come out and win Barber for sure. I was gonna be so
Right.
pissed. Yeah, the fact that it's already race week again, I'm like, pumped.
I'm so excited that it's race week again. And just speaking of Barber though, Teo, he was also the biggest mover, which is a thing in
He did
IndyCar.
so well.
They don't have like driver of the day, but they have biggest mover. You get a little trophy for it, which is cute. So he moved up, what was it? It was
22 to 11.
Yeah, he qualified.
So he finished ahead of Rossi, actually. Again, Rossi was like down a lot because he had to go back into the pits
Rossi
early.
ended up at 10th. So he was right behind Teo. So Rossi was 10th and then Teo was 11th.
So did he finish ahead of Pato? Am I thinking that wrong?
Yes.
Okay, he finished ahead of Pato.
Pato was.
Anyway, he finished ahead of one of like the drivers, but like rookie coming in there, he had one practice session, he doesn't know the track, and then he goes and moves 11 places. Like, shout out to him.
So well. And where I was standing at the Firestone's tent, the 6 car was right next to me. So there was obviously a lot of, Arrow McLaren team watching there, and obviously he had a handful of friends there. And it was really cool to see. And I think it kind of sets a precedent, not only just for Formula 2 drivers and Formula 2 champions, but like people that are coming to the Formula series and realizing like, hey, maybe F1 is not an avenue that I'm going to have anytime soon. And hopefully changing the perspectives of IndyCar, that it's not this downgraded series for people that are either retired or just not very good in F1 or these other series to come racing. Like it is super competitive, and it's cool to see that there are some similars with F2 in regards to like they do drive a Gela or a chassis, and it is a spec series, so there is some similarity to that. But being with the new team,
there power steering in F2? I don't think there is. No, so that's also similar with Indy. There's only power steering in F1. So he had, again, don't want to call it like an advantage, but like going into IndyCar, he already has that familiarity.
Because that's one of the biggest things you hear about people first getting into the IndyCar is like the physicality of the car itself, and like to have that already kind of under his belt is definitely like an advantage.
Yeah. And now he is racing at Barber.
Yes, that just announced this morning.
Confirmed today. I wonder how David's doing.
I know. I think about him now and then.
I felt really bad. He was the few times that I was dared to pass the Arrow McLaren transporters, especially like during the signing thing, because I figured they would even have, because the way that the autograph session works, which was a little bit different than most other races, because usually it's 2 lines and 2 long tables of drivers. Pick a line and you get to get all those drivers. So because Long Beach is so big, in the paddock they had all of the drivers sit outside of the transporters in their area of the paddock, so then you can kind of go from team to team and go get in the lines were shorter, which I kind of liked. And they had just Rossi, Teo, and Pato signing. And I was like, I'm surprised that you're not having, David sign, even though he's not driving. And so I felt my like heart broke because he was like just kind of standing behind them and just like had the saddest like puppy dog face. And then like some people were like, hey David, can we take a photo? And he just like absolutely lit up and like, started talking to some people. And so I feel for him in regards to what a tough opportunity. It's cool to see that Callum gets a shot and Teo, and with Prema coming in, who knows, with other teams on the prowl, perhaps for next year's 2025 grid. But I hope he gets an opportunity and absolutely kills it when he's 100% healed.
Well, I think IMS might be his first race back, which
You think the Grand Prix or the 500?
the
Grand Prix. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we have a couple weeks, like maybe a 2-week break, I think, after Barber.
He still has the brace on, which was
this past weekend.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to find something about the points. Just like saying how big of a difference. Like Scotty Mac before this race was second in the standings, and now he's down to like 10th or something.
I
Like
think
it's
Pato
just
was like 2, and then he's like down to 7 or something. So it was a really big swing.
But I love that though. Like just the variety, like how everyone gets points. Also, you get points even if you don't finish, which I found out, which I thought, but I don't know if I like that because what did you
I don't
do?
think I like it either.
Yeah, I
right.
don't like that.
What did you do to get these 5 points? Yes, it's only 5 points, but like again, what did you do? What did you do? Nothing.
I agree.
On the topic of Scotty Mac, we want to wish personal congratulations to him and his wife.
Yes, that was so exciting. He literally announced that like the day or the night before our media like bullpen interviews, and so Sarah got to chat with him, and she was like, she sent me it before that night before I even saw it, and she was like literally crying, and it was really cute, and obviously super excited for them. And I chatted with Graham Rahal for a short stint, and I was like, I love you're such a girl dad, like love it, and all the good things he says about women's sports. But I was like, you're gonna have to transfer some of that and give some advice to Scotty Mac, because it was like literally the second day after he announced it, he's like, oh yeah. So it was cool seeing all the drivers support him and with their announcement.
So exciting for him.
Yeah,
I'm
pumped for him.
It's so adorable. Oh, he's gonna be a great dad.
Yeah, I mean, he's
100%.
just such a great human. But having, especially like if he becomes a girl dad. Oh my gosh.
I know. Well, they're having a girl, aren't they?
Was that announced?
Yeah, it is.
I think
they are.
Yeah, I think it was pink.
No, I think you're right, because I remember the balloons now. So yeah.
So
girl dad.
I love it.
Girl dad, Scotty Mac.
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, so he.
Well, 3 of them.
For what?
Right? Joseph. Oh no, Joseph has a boy.
Boy. Yeah.
Yeah. But Joseph's first in the standings with 87 points. Scott Dixon 75, Colton Herta up to third with 72. So like the field is just so close, which shows my mind. Also, sorry, this is F1 related. Did you guys see that they are thinking about changing the points for 2025 for F1?
Yeah.
So that like 11th and 12th get 2 and 1 points. And, like it just kind of goes from like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Anyway, I love that.
Yes.
Like Indy does such a good job, and I think it makes so much sense that to keep the field more competitive, why not do it with F1?
It reminds me of the Lando quote. Gosh, I can't remember which race it was, but when he's like trying to get through lap traffic and he's like, what are they even racing for? And it's like one Lando, that was you, like, in the beginning of 2023, but that's fine. But it kind of feels like that, right? Because it's like this hunt for 10th, which is literally a single point. And so I think it would be really nice to have some spread out, and that, that helps the midfield be way more competitive. Because let's be real, most of the F1 race, we're watching the midfield because Max is so far in front that we're like, well, let's see who's getting a point or two. So
no,
I think that would be really cool.
Yeah. No, it's true. Did you hear that? No, obviously we could be doing this for a year, but we're going to start now. Speculating for Prema. Mick Schumacher is rumored.
Oh,
yes, that would be really fun. There's a lot of contract speculation. I would say within the next couple weeks, even, because obviously everything really comes down to the 500. Like, it's the most important race. And so, Newgarden's contract is up. Rossi's contract is up. I think David Malucas's is only one. So there's a couple big names that are up. And, especially with Pato re-signing this contract with McLaren, I think him and Herta are the highest paid drivers on the grid right now. And I don't think Joseph makes nearly as much as those guys make.
He doesn't.
So,
it's like anything that he makes, it's all from like media stuff. Like it's like the
Mhm.
sponsorships,
Which we
and
know
it's
he hates
which he hates
doing.
doing. Like it's
And
not
this
like
man just won the
Penske's.
500 last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know,
Like-
but it's not like, I mean, but same thing goes with Marcus Ericsson. Marcus Ericsson was making like shit all the year he won the 500.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like, yeah, Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward are they're the two drivers up there making like the most amount of money. But even then, it's like nothing in comparison to the F1 drivers.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think there's going to be a lot of talks, and I think Lundgaard's, contract comes up as well. And so obviously the RLL team did not have great cars for the 500. And so I just think there's going to be a lot of stuff kind of rooming around these next couple weeks leading up to the 500, because I think that's going to dictate heavily who goes where. And what Prima was saying is they're kind of open to anyone, but their first kind of thoughts are some sort of veteran within the sport, and then maybe a rookie. So you could think Rossi, I'm pretty sure, came from Prima. Then, but you have Callum, who I would consider more of a rookie now, or sorry, a vet now. Then you have Teo, who knows what's going to happen with the Sauber seats turning into Audi. Like there's so many options, and I think it could be a phenomenal bridge to bring more F2 drivers and drivers that have come up to the Formula Series, realizing that yes, Formula One is amazing, it's the pinnacle, but it's just not realistic when there's only 20 cars. And in IndyCar, yes, there's 27 full-time cars, but we have one off to the 500. We have now that part-time deal with road and street courses and ovals, and there's just way more opportunities to have an opportunity to showcase what you can do and getting your name out there. And I think that's really exciting. And I would love to see Mick drive, which is funny because Schumacher, his dad, always said he would never, ever, ever drive an IndyCar and never drive ovals because it's just crazy. Like he's like, they're psychos. It's too dangerous driving 234 miles an hour. So I think it'd be really cool to see, Mick have another opportunity and obviously hopefully kill it.
And maybe build his own name and legacy in IndyCar, because the Schumacher name forever in Formula One is going to be Michael. So maybe this is Mick's own avenue. I don't know. We'll see.
Who would you like to see
Absolutely.
beside Mick if you could choose?
I think Ilott deserves a spot on the grid. I don't know, who that would be with. There's a lot of really good rookie talent, and I think it would be unique to bring some sort of Formula Series drivers over, and just the eyes, right? Because Prema has a huge following, and like their social media team like kills it on TikTok with Ollie and all. Like it's so funny. So I think that could just help the series in general. But I don't know. Some people are throwing around Logan's name, Sargent. I think a lot of people, if Ricardo isn't doing well, they're like, oh, just throw him into IndyCar. And I don't know if I would necessarily like Ricardo in IndyCar.
I don't think I would.
I would. I want
Okay.
Danny to join IndyCar. Not necessarily Prema, but I think Danny Rick would succeed more in IndyCar than definitely than what he's doing right now. But I think his F1 career, this might just be my opinion. I don't think it's actually just my opinion, but I think his career in F1 is really just going downhill. And I think IndyCar gives him that chance to be competitive in a car that is actually going to work for him. So I don't necessarily want him in Prema, but it would be cool to get him as a part-time driver. Maybe like just doing street and or not ovals, but like street and road courses, that kind of thing.
I just want Danny to build his empire. Like he kind of started it, and like with Enchante. Enchante is so successful. Then he started the DR3 Wines, and he would be an amazing broadcaster. I just want, like, if racing is done for him after, like, I mean, let's face it, after this year, his Formula One career is probably going to be over. It might not even last the entire year, which is crazy that a year ago we were talking about, will he be Max's teammate? But that's neither here nor there. And I just want him to find something that brings him so much joy. If that's IndyCar, that's amazing. I obviously root for Danny Rick in anything he does, but like if he just wants to build his own, like, he's a great entrepreneur, he's got a great personal brand, something like that.
I feel like he'd get more involved with like X Games kind of things, even if he's not an athlete, but like
he's just Scotty's wag from now on.
Yeah. Imagine though the amount of people that would actually tune in more for IndyCar if he joined. That's it with Prema too. Like they're bringing in so many more eyes just because everyone on the Formula side knows Prema. That if they do bring a Prema driver, like someone from that team or from that family, you're gonna have so many more people tuning in. And like Danny Rick going to IndyCar, so many more people tuning in.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the fans' main point is like, hey, he's going to bring a lot of eyes. And I think I heard someone tell me that, years ago, NASCAR was trying to like mention things to Ricardo, to get Ricardo to come.
I heard that.
He had a really big following. I I can see two sides of the coin. Like I can see him just absolutely loving it and just becoming like a terror and just like, because it's just way different. It's a way different environment NASCAR is in stock racing and bumping and doing all of these things and being super close. But I can see that being like really, really fun and funny. And he brings a completely different, vibe, and he stands up for himself. But I can also see it like,
That
I
is
don't
not
know
the
if that really
move.
matches his vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously he comes, that's why Red Bull had him as a reserve driver, like he was kind of like the media personnel in that sense. And that's kind of why he's in that Red Bull's V-carb seat. Now that they're calling it V-carb seat, because of his popularity and his fan base, not just because of the way that he drives. So I can totally understand why series, want him to come.
Yeah. If you were to make your crush tracker, you have listened to this show. I know you do. If you had a crush tracker after this weekend, personal experience, social media, content creation, whatever
Interactions you had.
Yeah, whatever you want to base it off of, I would love to hear your top 3.
Let's see here.
I'm going to give you a second to think, and I'm going to tell the audience that I am a Teo fan.
Teo did really well.
Okay. Continue, Mac, go.
I would say Pietro is up there. It was really cool talking to him, and I stood by his pit box a lot because I was able to kind of chat with one of the guys that does IT for them. So it was really cool just kind of making some relationships and standing by his car, because I love his journey, the amount of adversity that he's gone through, him and his family, and the relationship with his brother. So he was really, really awesome to talk about and talk with. So he'd be up there. Being able to interview Rossi was really cool, and hopefully ask him questions. He was just so funny because if anyone knows Rossi's personality, like there's this one guy in the media tent, I didn't know who it was, but he was asking about the Arrow screen because they launched a new Arrow screen this weekend, to help protect hand injuries and a little bit more airflow because they just get so hot in the cockpit. So this guy was so adamant about it being lighter, and I guess I didn't know that the car itself was actually the same weight because they counterbalance it somewhere else. And so the guy was like holding his phone trying to interview Rossi. He goes, well, I read the media press, like the media release, like they said it was lighter. And he's just like sitting there just like taking it, and he's like, yep, but the car is the same weight. And so you could just tell he's just, he just hates all the media, hates all that. And so it was fun kind of chatting with him and asking him some questions, like stuff that relates, that listening to his podcast that, maybe the normal media doesn't understand. So that was really fun chatting with him. I'm trying to think. Teo would probably be up there for how well he performed. Gosh, who else?
You're gonna give yours too.
Okay.
And me too.
I feel like I have to add one more, but now I'm like blanking on my whole weekend. I'll put Pato up there only because so Sarah was asking all the questions about Taylor Swift, if they had listened to the Taylor Swift, because it literally dropped like the night before we had the interview or something like that. And he asked her for recommend. He's like, well, what would you recommend? And she said Down Bad. And then like literally that day or that next day, he makes a funny TikTok video about that particular song. And so it was just funny because that's the one that Sarah recommended. I was like, Pato, like, let's be real, you probably just listened to that one song, and then you're like, okay, I'll make a video with it. So that was just kind of funny.
He knows what works with the people.
Yep.
Me, Pato is up there. He's always up there on my crush tracker. But truly he's up there because like his posts and like him taking accountability and just being like, this is my fault, I fucked up. We're talking Indy?
Yes.
Is there someone that I should be saying?
No.
Okay, I'm like, was there something that happened that I missed?
Because this is what we do. This is the segment that we do. Welcome, called Crush Tracker.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Pato's up there. Jack Harvey, I want to put him up there. I just feel so bad about how his race ended. Like it literally wasn't his fault that he couldn't avoid Rasmussen at all. Yeah. I felt so bad, so I'm just gonna put him up there because I just feel bad and I love him. And also I'm gonna put Pietro up there as well. Not because he had like an incredible race, but Pietro is probably like the best person to interact with on social media. Like I don't know if you go through messages, but he always responds to us. Yeah. And I'm always like, I am rooting for you every single weekend. Like, so I would say,
I know. I literally want to message him when we're like, hey, we're coming to Indy.
I know. I think the most favorite interaction I had with him is like he asked us how the
the eclipse was.
The eclipse watching at IMS was. And I was like, oh, we're not there. And he was like, oh, thought you were. And we're like, why did you?
Like, we're not from Indianapolis, but yeah.
But so it was just like a really sweet like interaction. And I was like, I love this. I could be friends with this man. Like I love this man. So
For
he's
sure.
up there for me. Those three.
Okay.
Pay out for you. You're in love with him.
I'm not in love with him. Marcus Ericsson still has my heart in IndyCar. Okay. I'll put Teo because welcome to IndyCar, biggest mover. A hair is not a hair out of place in anything he ever does. Like
Colton Herta. Oh, sorry.
That brings
Colton
me to number
Herta.
2 is Colton Herta. Because his social media presence this weekend was unbelievable.
I think the Andretti admin, they get their own crush tracker because the video of Marcus Ericsson standing, and that was like the Andretti hospitality.
So good.
So funny. I was absolutely dying and just seeing Kirkwood and her. Oh my God. I like,
because at one point their hops kind of synchronized and I was like, these two look ridiculous and hilarious at the same time, and they know that. And actually my number 1 is Michaela. She loves Formula 1 because she gave us all of the content this weekend. They did the Montana boys thing, which you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did the Montana boys thing with the Arrow McLaren boys, which she had Pato like fully commit to. And like, obviously David will do anything you ask him to do. So David, and then even Teo was like, doesn't miss a beat. Like, here we are and we're doing this type of content.
She also did like the glam
bot.
The
glam bot was so good. She got Rossi.
I know.
Like that was the biggest shock of the weekend. I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
Rossi
I figured it was like
Rossi
he actually smiled. Right. He smiled at it. I'm like, this is life-changing.
Yeah, we didn't talk to Rossi at all in thermal.
Like, to be very honest, he was around. We were petrified of Rossi.
They're like, he's not going to take us seriously. He's not going to want to do anything that we want to do.
And Connor was like, no, he'll be fine. Talk to him. He's a great guy. And we're like, no, I totally believe he's the best guy ever. Petrified.
Scared. We're scared. We're intimidated.
We're gonna have to like email Lauren when we go
be like
IMS and be like, can we get a redemption with Rossi? Because like we just thought he would hate us and maybe he won't. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like you just kind of have to like lighten him up because one of the questions, because I didn't ask, or I guess I asked one motorsport related question, but one of, the ongoing joke, or at least his New Year's resolution, right, with IndyCar admin, post was, what's your New Year's resolution? His was to get invited on Ryan Hunter Race Yacht. And so that's like just an ongoing thing, throughout the year. And so, and everyone knows how much he loves Creed. And so one of the questions I asked him was like, okay, would you rather have a private Creed concert or get invited on Ryan Hunter Ray's yacht? And so then he kind of was like laughing, and then he was like, okay, definitely Ryan Hunter Ray's yacht. And so I felt like it kind of eased in. So it kind of felt like maybe it wasn't just basic questions that, that maybe people don't know, that maybe not follow the series, or just kind of cookie cutter questions. So I think that like lightened him up a little bit, hopefully, or maybe he was just in a good mood.
Yeah, I totally think he's the type of guy that like, kind of like Scotty Mack was when Ash was interviewing him at Thermal, where it's like, I'll talk about anything, no problem. Like, let's not talk about motorsports. Like, it's actually a nice break for me to just talk about something else. And obviously they know it's what they're there to do, so they'll answer questions. But like, I feel like he's way more inclined to like have a conversation with you when you're talking about Creed and the yacht and the funny things that they do on the podcast and whatnot, instead of like
his job,
that media member who's like, no, it's lighter. Like, you can't out motorsport engineer Rossi. Like, he's been in it for too long. You're not going to convince him or give him some new information that he doesn't know. Like, let's just talk about like stupid shit and not racing.
And that's probably what they do like. And yeah, it was funny. And you mentioning Connor was funny because after I had texted you, and I was like, oh, I saw Connor, but I didn't say hi. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to say hi. And just walking the paddock, I was like, hey, just wanted to introduce myself. And I was like, I'm friends with Emma Hannah. He goes, oh, my Track Talk girls. And it was really cute. And it was short. But then him and his girlfriend were watching at the Firestone pit entry area for the actual race. And so because this is a huge sponsorship event, there's a lot of people coming and going. And so they were very, very, very strict on credentials, like rechecking credentials numerous times, like throughout the weekend and throughout the race. So even if you got through, like, and you were just standing there, like credentials were credentials. So they were checking like probably a little too aggressively, but to each his own. And so I was standing next to Caitlin from Fan Amp and we were watching, and Connor was there with his girlfriend, and the security guard comes up, taps Connor on the shoulder and says, credentials. And me and Caitlin like could not help but like we were laughing out loud, and then we were like looking at him after he showed it, just laughing so hard because we're like, okay, the security guy does not know who he is, but like his hard card literally says driver. And so it was it was like, I felt like, Connor, we know who you are. It's okay. But
It's
I
like
felt
the
bad. It was
t-shirt
really
all
funny.
over again.
Yeah, it's when he like we saw a fan wearing a shirt and he's like, nice shirt. It's like, did you know that was Connor?
No, he had
Just
no
complimented
idea.
your shirt. The thing about the hard cards too is like it says driver in
I
like
know.
big bold writing. Like if you were standing a few feet away, you can definitely tell. But I will
They keep it in
say,
his pocket,
I
so
guess
maybe,
he does, yeah. But I will say his hard card pass, like we saw his photo. It's him when he was like 17.
Yeah, so I don't
Oh my,
even know.
and I saw, it was so, yeah, I'm like, like,
That's
what
not
is
you.
that?
It is him, but it's not him.
Yes.
Like, so I
So
will say that
funny.
is pretty funny. And he had to be like, he has to be like, this is me. I am a driver.
Right,
This
right. You
is-
think that they'd update the picture though?
He doesn't
because-
want to. He likes it. He's just like, that's his photo. Like,
That's adorable.
Dummy.
that's funny.
If I ever get the chance to talk to Rossi, we're gonna talk about racquetball.
Yes, and I thought about asking that question, but I like the funny thing was I literally listened to that podcast like after I landed, like driving to the track, and I was like, I might maybe give it some time to like breathing room to make it not sound like the
Like you
second thing
just
dropped.
Like you
listened? Yeah,
just
yeah.
listened. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, maybe I'll give it some time, But yeah,
By Indy, we should be
that was
fine.
funny. Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Right. Let
Yeah.
it marinate for a little bit. Maybe they get a membership. That kind of situation.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to go to the 500?
Yes. So I think I'm just gonna fully send it and go and just kind of figure it out. So I'm super excited. And it was I was always kind of on the fence, but it was like there's
Yeah, no,
not
that's what
super
happened.
That's
crazy.
exactly what happened to me.
That Hannah, yeah, that happened to
Yes.
Hannah. But Hannah was telling me, she was like, Mac wants to go, but she doesn't know. And I'm like,
That's why
if we put her on the spot this episode, like, what is she gonna do?
Exactly.
Say no?
I actually texted Mac. I think it was Saturday, and I was like, I know you're involved in the indie bubble right now. So what are the odds that you're actually going to come to the 500 now? And she was like, give me a week to figure it out. I was like, you have longer than a week, but
Yeah. And it's not super easy from a flight perspective for some reason to get to Portland to Indy, but like I have a ton of airline points. And like, you know what? Like I can use my points, and I was like, I can figure it out. Like if you guys are going, find people, and obviously was able to network with a lot of people from Indy. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make it work, and I'm just gonna wing it, and we'll see what happens. But going into the weekend, I was like, kind of on the fence about it. I'm like, it's kind of close to it now, and whatnot. And then after the weekend and hearing everyone talk about how phenomenal it is, I was like, I just have to do it. I'm like, I don't care. If it's the one time I go, I have to do it. But I was like, for being so passionate about the series and the series growing, I just feel like I have to be there to experience it and to be able to, reiterate that to everyone else that asks about it.
when we were saying bye to David at Thermal, he was like, what races are you guys going to be at next? And we were like, oh, I said that, M's going to Indy, but like, we're going to definitely try to get to Nashville. And he was like, you guys should really come to the 500. Like he was saying to me, like, you should really come to the 500.
Like,
We're
make it work, girls.
You know what? It's working. And that's an official announcement that we have a girl gang going to the Indy 500.
Okay.
So
We'll be there.
literally
Yeah.
could not be happier.
So excited. That'd be great.
Like outfits are already being planned in my head, I must say.
That's not surprising.
No, not
She's
at all.
ready.
All right, gonna wrap it up. You
Yeah.
know our outro. You must.
I mean, I won't say it now, but yes. Cha-ching.
This was another In Case You Missed Indy.
We are Track Talk.
Ciao for now.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Mac.